She didn't flinch when they told her to smile. She didn't blink when they gave her a smaller dressing room, cut her set short, or passed her over for yet another man who couldn't remember his lines. But Jeanie Seely did stop smiling the night she walked out of room 6B. Not because she was scared. Because she understood. There are places backstage no one talks about. Hallways that never appear on floor plans, doors that don't exist by daylight. And inside those doors, deals are made that never get written down. Not in ink, not where anyone can find them. Jeanie found one, or rather, it found her. And for over 50 years she pretended it hadn't happened. Because that was the rule. You don't speak. You don't name names. You survive. Until a letter she typed in the middle of the night in 1971, on a typewriter no one even owns anymore, resurfaced in a folder it was never supposed to be in. A folder buried in the Opry's restricted archives. It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't a theory. It was proof. And once you have proof, you don't need permission to tell the truth. Not anymore. Before the rhinestones, before the standing ovations, before the silence. Jeanie Seely was just a girl from northwestern Pennsylvania, where steel ran through people's veins and dreams rarely crossed the county line. Her father worked the late shift at the local mill, his hands always nicked, always bruised. Her mother scrubbed floors by day, sang hymns in the kitchen by night, no stage lights, no microphones, just the hum of resilience and the echo of second chances. Jeanie's first songs weren't meant for anyone. She wrote them in margins of school books, church programs, old grocery lists. She didn't have a piano, barely had a radio. But she had a voice, and it didn't sound like anything her town had ever heard. At 16, she mailed her lyrics to a Nashville publishing house. No agent, no manager, just a girl, a stamp, and a hope no bigger than a folded piece of paper. No one wrote back. She sent more. At 21, she packed a single suitcase, a battered manual typewriter, and boarded a southbound Greyhound. No guaranteed gigs, no safety net. Just 3 sandwiches, $10, and an address scribbled on the inside cover of her notebook. Music Row, Nashville. When she arrived, she didn't look like much. Worn shoes, sharp wit, eyes that didn't blink. She took temp jobs answering phones, slept on couches, sometimes cars, and at night, always at night, she sang in places where the ceiling fans groaned louder than the crowds. She was told she didn't sound feminine enough, didn't dress country enough, didn't play safe enough. She never changed. Then one night, in a smoky bar on the outskirts of town, she sang a song called Don't Touch Me. A man in the back, shadowed by the dim light and his own reputation, didn't clap. He just handed her a card. No title, no small talk, just a gesture and a future. Within weeks, that voice, strong, bruised, unbending, was on the radio. Not just in Nashville, everywhere. The money came slow, the awards came late, but her voice moved faster than both. Because Jeanie Seely didn't ask for permission to matter, she just showed up, and that was the problem. The Grand Ole Opry wasn't just a stage, it was a shrine. For most, performing there was the end of a journey, the pinnacle. For Jeanie, it was just another threshold, one that didn't open with applause but with rules. The first time she walked backstage at the Opry, the walls felt colder than they should have. Polished floors, men in tailored jackets, women in long sleeves and longer smiles. There were nods, tight-lipped greetings, and then the clipboard. A handler, barely older than her, stepped in front of her dressing room and read from a list like it had been carved in stone. No dancing, no cleavage, no political jokes, no ad-libs, no talking back. Jeanie nodded politely. Then she did every single thing they told her not to. The audience didn't mind. They leaned in closer, laughed harder, applauded longer. Because Jeanie didn't just sing songs, she inhabited them. When she stepped to the microphone, her voice didn't ask for attention, it commanded it. Not with volume, but with gravity. Her heartbreaks sounded lived in, her desire unfiltered. And when she made you laugh, it was because she meant to, not because she was trying to be cute. That's what scared them. She didn't flinch, she didn't beg, she didn't shrink. And in a space run by men who preferred their women soft-spoken and interchangeable, Jeanie Seely was neither. Instead of being celebrated, she was managed. Her set times were unpredictable. Sometimes she was moved last minute. Sometimes she was paired with acts that barely acknowledged her. And more than once, she walked on stage without the proper mic check, her voice barely audible until the second verse. Still, she kept coming back, every Friday, Every Saturday, hair done, eyes sharp, notes memorized, and quietly, against their best efforts, she made history. Not because they wanted her to, but because they couldn't stop her. Jeanie Seely became the first woman to regularly host the Grand Ole Opry. Not perform, host. She wasn't just part of the show, she was steering it. And from the crowd's view, it looked like she'd finally broken through. But backstage, just past the green rooms and old photo walls, the whispering got louder. The warnings got colder. And one night, after the power flickered and the air went still, a folded note landed in her hand. No greeting, no signature. Just 3 characters, 6B. It started with thunder. Not the dramatic kind that rolls in for effect, but the kind that presses in around you. Slow and thick. The kind that makes lights flicker just long enough for people to forget how certain they were. It was early 1971. A storm crawled over Nashville, low and unforgiving. The Grand Ole Opry crowd didn't notice much. The power hiccuped, the lights dimmed, but the show went on. Backstage, it was a different story. Generators rumbled, hallways went half dark. Technicians scrambled to reboot systems that weren't designed for outages. It was chaos masked in professionalism. Until a stagehand, eyes lowered, handed Jeanie a folded note. No envelope, no context. Just 3 characters, written in quick, firm pencil. 6B, 9:40 p.m. She didn't ask questions. You weren't supposed to. Not about rooms that weren't on your hallway maps. Not about instructions that came during power outages. The route took her past the costume closet, down an older corridor no longer used for tours. The carpet shifted to concrete. The air smelled different, like old plaster and waiting. There was no signage, no security, just a single unmarked door with a brass knob dulled by time. The hum behind it wasn't electrical. It was quieter than that, like breath, like tension. When she opened it, the room inside was bare. 1 lamp, 1 wooden chair, and 1 man. No name, no pleasantries. He wasn't there to charm her. He was there to deliver something, a message. He looked her over, not with desire, not even with judgment, just with calculation. The kind you use when deciding whether to file something, discard it, or keep it in your pocket for later. Then he spoke. Just 1 question. She's never repeated it aloud. Not in interviews. Not in private. Not even in the letters. Because it didn't matter. Her answer was never going to change what followed. He wasn't there for a negotiation. He was there to make sure she understood the rules. Not the ones printed on backstage notices. The real ones. The ones whispered in windowless rooms with no paper trail and no second chances. When she walked out 11 minutes later, her face had changed. Not visibly. But something behind the eyes. The way she moved, slightly slower, slightly smaller. She didn't go back to the dressing room. She didn't speak to anyone. Instead, she walked straight out the back entrance and into the parking lot, still dressed in what she'd worn for that night's performance. A stunning floor-length gown, sapphire blue, hand-trimmed with rhinestones. It was her favorite. She folded it carefully, placed it on the asphalt, and set it on fire. A janitor spotted her from across the lot, standing still as the flames took hold. He later told someone she looked like she was watching a person burn, not a dress. Jeanie never wore blue on stage again. The first letter was typed the same night. She didn't even take her shoes off when she got home. The floor creaked under her, the kettle untouched, the television dark. Instead, she sat at her old manual typewriter, familiar, unflinching, and began to write. Not a diary, not a poem, a record, dated, signed, single-spaced, onion-skin paper. She recounted every moment she could recall from room 6B, the man's posture, his tone, the temperature of the room, the way the bulb flickered when he leaned forward, like even the light didn't want to hear what was said. She didn't add emotion, didn't editorialize. She wasn't writing to be believed. She was writing to remember. That night marked the beginning of what would become a collection. Not of grievances, but of evidence. She documented it all. The time she was bumped from a Saturday show with no explanation. The night her mic didn't turn on until halfway through the second verse. The dressing room curtain that never rose until it was too late. The sudden pauses in introductions that once read her full name, now trimmed to a half-hearted mention between sets. She recorded names, dates, behavior. Every omission. Every erasure. Not because she intended to use them. Because she was tired of being told it hadn't happened. The box she kept them in was simple, shoebox-sized, sturdy. She wrapped it in a faded red scarf her mother had given her when she left Pennsylvania, a piece of home tied around a quiet war. She never called them letters out loud, never showed them to anyone. But they became her insurance policy. A private archive of the things people liked to forget, and of the things they wanted her to forget most of all. Because the most damaging thing the Opry ever tried to convince its women of was that they were too emotional, too reactive, too difficult, that nothing they remembered was real. Jeanie knew better. She saw what happened to the women who questioned too much, stayed too long, stood too tall. So she typed, with precision, with control, not because she wanted vengeance, but because she wasn't going to let them write her story for her. It was past midnight when she smelled the smoke, not the thick, choking kind. At first, it was subtle, a strange sweetness in the air, the kind of warning that doesn't shout, but whispers. By the time she opened her bedroom door, the hallway was already painted in orange. Her second home, her quiet escape just outside Nashville, was on fire. The firefighter said it could have been much worse. Most of the structure held. The kitchen, living room, even her records, intact. But her bedroom? Gone. Charred beams, collapsed plaster, fragments of what used to be stage gowns and fan letters now unrecognizable, folded into ash. She sat on her porch in an old robe, barefoot on the cold wood, watching the night erase a piece of her past. Until a firefighter emerged from the haze, coughing, holding something wrapped in a scorched towel. A small box, the brass latch blackened, the corners warped by heat, but it was still closed. She unwrapped it carefully, expecting smoke and soot. Instead, the faint smell of burned silk, and underneath, page after page, untouched. The letters had survived. The scarf she'd wrapped them in was gone, reduced to threads and dust. But the paper? Not a singe. Not a single burned edge. She opened the first one she ever typed, the one from 1971. The language was sharp, measured. The ink slightly faded, but legible, vivid, alive. She read until the sun began to rise. And what she saw on those pages didn't feel like her life anymore. It felt like someone else's. Like a woman who had been cornered, silenced, reshaped. Someone she barely recognized. Someone she never wanted to become again. She didn't cry. Not once. Not even when she reached the final page. Instead, she whispered it. Quiet, certain, like a promise to herself. I wasn't crazy. That fire didn't destroy her archive. It confirmed its purpose. Because the truth, she realized, didn't need a stage. It just needed to survive. It came decades later. She was 90, drinking tea, watching the sunset. Then, a knock. A young woman, maybe 30, nervous, clutching a folder. She was researching her thesis on forgotten women of country music. Jeanie was about to decline, until the girl said room 6B. Time stopped. The girl pulled out a photocopy. It was one of the letters, not a copy. A scan, her format, her words, her typewriter font. Dated June 15th, 1971. Jeanie's heart froze. The girl had found it by accident, misfiled in a stack of stage blueprints in the Opry's restricted archive. Someone had slipped it in. The girl looked Jeanie in the eye and said, I think they did this to other women, and I think they'll do it again. That night, Jeanie opened the shoebox for the last time. She read everything. And then she donated it to an archive outside of Opry control. Sealed. Set for public release if anything happened to her. And after her quiet memoir came out, a book that barely made headlines but shook the foundation, things started changing. A backstage protection policy was passed. A few names vanished quietly from Opry management. Young women began whispering thank you in passing. And one night, as Jeanie stood in the wings, waiting for what could be her last show, a new artist brushed past her, then turned and whispered, thank you for not letting them bury you. Jeanie Seely didn't leave the Opry with a farewell special or a final standing ovation. She just stopped showing up one day. No tribute, no curtain call, just an empty stool and a silence that felt heavier than usual. But her voice didn't vanish. It echoes. In the old floorboards, in the typed letters, in every girl who refuses to be silenced. Because Jeanie Seely isn't just a survivor of the Grand Ole Opry. She's its witness, its memory, its conscience. And no matter how many renovations they make, how many policies they write, how many photos they hang, they will never control that final song. The one she still hums on her porch. The one born from truth. The one they never wanted her to sing. If this story moved you, if you believe these stories need to be told, then hit that like button. subscribe, and tap the bell for more untold stories from behind the spotlight. Because sometimes, the quietest voices echo the loudest.